He called my name in something like a barbarian shriek. I ignored him and held my head tight. It would explode. All that would be left was an adorably dressed corpse and brain matter that spackled the mirror. Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lepke, and today I wanted to share an excerpt from my new book, Fine. Fine is the story about the last day in the life of a teenage girl as she struggles with substance use, family drama, and broken relationships. It's a dark story about the insidious nature of depression in modern-day youth. So today, as a lead up to the launch of my book on May 15th, I wanted to share an excerpt from my story. Fine, a novel by CC Lepke, Chapter 1. The carpet scraped against my cheek. I laid on the ground in the dim twilight that peeked through the window of my bedroom. Up on the nightstand, the alarm clock cast a steady glow of green into the shadows, but didn't lift the darkness. Inches from my face was a dead roly-poly, with its many legs caught in the fibers of the carpet and holding it to the floor like a Velcro pad. The bug didn't look like it had ever been alive, with its gray-blue body faded and brittle. It could have been an old bug. Maybe it lived a good long life with a bug wife and a billion bug kids. Or maybe it got caught in the carpet and died alone before it ever had a chance to make something of itself. Stupid bug. I could have stayed prone on the floor forever. My muscles ached, my head throbbed, and would it really be so bad if I missed one day of school? Mom would chew me out if I skipped class. She wouldn't even have to scream. Her face would twist as she looked at me. Disgust mixed with disappointment and some other emotion I didn't want to identify. It wouldn't be much different from the way she normally looked at me, but that didn't mean I needed to invite it. My alarm was going to go off soon. I scraped my nose against the carpet again and hid my face from the scant light. If I stayed on the floor, would I die like the roly-poly? Would someone find me on the floor of my room, gray and brittle, as if I was never alive at all? A sigh escaped as I groggily pushed off of the ground and turned off the alarm clock before it could sing. I crawled shamelessly on all fours across the bedroom floor and scrounged through a pile of dirty clothes for a pair of jeans. A fashionable pair of skinny jeans with artfully ripped knees lay buried under a pile of dirty clothes. The legs pulled inside out and a pair of dirty underwear trapped inside. I sighed dramatically and untangled the underwear from the legs to look at the jeans properly. They were so uncomfortable, but they were also really cute and made my butt look fantastic. I dragged them over my thighs and hobbled to the closet to blindly grab the first shirt I touched. It was a little gray sweater with cut-out shoulders and lace spread asymmetrically across the top of the chest. I kept the cutest clothes I could find and threw out anything that made me look sloppy so that it was nearly impossible to dress poorly even by accident. Appearances, my parents assured me, were everything. In the hallway, shuffling feet scuffed drunkenly across the floor, a symptom of early morning grogginess. The sound of uncoordinated steps halted halfway down the hall, then turned, not toward the master bedroom where my parents slept, but toward the hallway bathroom. I leapt across the room and flung the door open to witness my father making his way toward my bathroom, one hand shoved unceremoniously down the back of his pajamas as he scratched his butt. Our eyes locked for a breathless moment, then we both surged forward. My feet pounded the floor as I raced to beat Dad to the bathroom so I could get in a quick shower before the school bus arrived. Dad slid forward, body blocking me as he opened the bathroom door just enough for him to slip into the room ahead of me. "Sorry, sweetheart, I'm running late this morning," he said. He didn't sound sorry even a little. He had bags under his eyes and his voice was dead and disinterested. He'd been like that for over a year, ever since he got laid off from his factory job. Every day was like watching him turn into even more of a zombie. He shuffled as he walked, eyes cast permanently downward. Dad woke up miserable, went to work miserable, and came home even more miserable. I pounded on the door. "You're always late, you stupid jerk. And you have your own bathroom, why don't you use that?" "Stop shouting, you'll wake your mother," he said. The rush of water as it struck the bottom of the porcelain bathtub drowned out any other noise in the room. It was hard to fight with an opponent who could conceivably ignore a rhinoceros rampaging through a glass factory. "I hope you cut yourself shaving." I kicked the door. Growling impotently, I spun to stomp into the living room, but stopped short. Mom stood in the darkness of her bedroom cave, deep-set eyes shadowed by a monstrous glare. The pallor of her skin was waxy and mottled. She wore a big t-shirt, stretched-out granny panties, and a cloak of righteous anger. Her hair was a dark, tangled mess that hung down to her shoulders. "Good morning." I fought to master my expression. "Where were you last night?" she asked. I shook my head and walked through the archway into the living room. Mom gave chase. She growled down my neck as I beat a swift retreat through the house. "Where were you?" she asked again. "You were supposed to be home by 10. I waited up until 2 in the morning and you still weren't home." If Mom hated anything, it was lack of punctuality. She grabbed my arm roughly, but I jerked out of her grip before she could squeeze hard enough to leave a bruise. Her lips pressed into a tight white line. I recoiled, chest locked with the paralysis of sudden anxiety. I shouldn't have pulled away. Mom raised one-fisted hand, caught the look of fear in my eyes, then dropped it. She pumped her fingers at her side, teeth gritted. "When did you get home?" She fought to keep her voice even. "I got back a little after that. I was with friends." "Which friends?" she demanded. "Does it matter? You don't know them." I turned away, hands shaking. Sometimes it was like my mouth was possessed. I retreated into the kitchen, cursing myself inwardly for talking back like that. It was stupid. Mom followed after me, rounding the breakfast peninsula that separated the kitchen from the living room a breath after I did. I slammed a box of cereal on the counter and yanked open the refrigerator door. Mom knocked the refrigerator door shut as I reached for the milk, nearly amputating my hand before I snatched it away. "I didn't give you permission to stay out that late, Sydney," Mom said. Her voice was a harsh growl that made it sound like she was possessed by a demon. She held a hand over the refrigerator door and leaned her weight into it so I couldn't open it again. She was a couple of inches shorter than me, but what she lacked in height she made up for in the muscle that nurses needed to lift their heavy patients. Even if I pulled at the refrigerator door all day, it wouldn't budge as long as she didn't want it to. I glared for a couple of seconds, then swiped a bowl from the dish drainer over the sink and dumped my Raisin Bran into it. Little flakes of bran scattered out of the bowl and over the counter. I swept them off onto the floor and fished a spoon out of the drawer to eat the cereal dry. "Sydney," Mom said. It was the voice she'd used when I was little and broke her favorite angel statue. I stood there with its head and one wing clutched in my tiny hands and cried. Mom held the statue's body clutched tight to her chest and looked at me with such disappointment that my heart broke. "Sydney," she'd said, voice deep and trembling. "Why would you do this?" It was just as effective now as it was then. "Why do you do this? I love you with all of my heart, and all you do is disrespect me. It's like you have no feelings. How did you turn out to be so hateful?" "I don't mean to," I said weakly, suddenly 6 years old again with shattered pieces of porcelain digging into my palms. Guilt and fear warred inside my chest, laying waste to my lungs. I didn't want her to be angry. It was the last thing I wanted, but I was just so good at making her that way. "You could have been hurt and I would have no way of knowing," Mom insisted. "Do you really not care about anyone but yourself?" I made the mistake of looking into her eyes. They were shiny, feverish, and dark. There was love there. Certainly there was love. But the other thing that hid under the surface of her expression, that deeper, darker emotion, I didn't want to identify. I retreated silently and sat down at the bar stool next to the breakfast peninsula. The bran flakes tasted like sawdust and worked wonders to smother the retort that fought its way out of my mouth. The cereal turned into a cement ball in my throat. I swallowed several times to clear it. The glob of wheat glue settled forcefully in my stomach. "You're grounded," she said. "Honest to God, Sid, I don't know what's gotten into you recently. You've always been hard to deal with, but now you keep pulling this crap and I am at my wit's end. What is wrong with you?" I didn't answer. She didn't like it. "Well?" she shouted. I jumped slightly at her volume, but still didn't respond. Mom shoved the bar stool that I sat on. It tilted so far over that the legs nearly slid out from under it. My body jerked at the sudden sensation of falling, and I clung to the seat and braced myself against the counter. "I work so hard to keep a roof over our heads," she shouted. "Everything you have is because of me. The least you could do is show some respect." She rattled the chair again, then snatched the bowl of cereal away so hard that the contents flew out over the floor. She tossed the bowl back at me, and I covered my head as it flew past my face to thunk against the wall. "Say something," she screamed in my ear as I cowered away. "I'm sorry," I said. My voice was so small that I'm surprised she heard it. "Oh, you're sorry? You've been doing this crap for too long, Sydney. Sorry doesn't fix it. What do you have to say for yourself?" "I'm sorry." I said it a little louder this time. "Stop saying you're sorry," she screamed. I choked down another apology. My face heated up around my eyes, and I fought to keep my breath even. I didn't look up at her or move a muscle. Her hand fell gently against the back of my neck. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mom petted my hair. Her lips were pulled into a tight white line, and she scratched her neck hard, leaving long red trails against her waxy skin. She couldn't look me in the eyes, just kept petting my hair softly. "I'm doing the best I can, Sid." "I know. I'm sorry." Her hand dropped to her side, and she turned away to open the fridge. She pulled out the jug of milk and poured some into a new bowl, followed by another serving of Raisin Bran. Mom slid the bowl in front of me like a peace offering. I stared blankly at the cereal, and my stomach did an uncomfortable somersault. "I really don't need this right now," Mom said. The bags under her eyes were tinged purple from lack of sleep. She stepped away and tiredly dug through a junk drawer. Random scraps of paper, batteries, and rubber bands fell into a growing pile on the counter. My chest ached. She worked another 16-hour shift yesterday. Our house, the cars, the food, all of it was because Mom broke her back to make ends meet. Dad's new job barely paid minimum wage. The burden of our lives fell squarely on her shoulders. Mom's mood swings had been bad before. Lately, she was angrier than ever. She yelled more, threw things more. It was like living with a tornado, never knowing when it would strike. Mom waited quietly for me to respond, then shook her head when I refused to give in. "I just wish you would consider my feelings for once." Her words, in such a soft and reasonable tone, sent a spike of guilt straight through my heart. "I'm sorry," I said, then caught my breath, waiting for her to scream again. My head throbbed miserably, and I yearned to go back to bed. There was no chance of that while Mom paced through the kitchen and emptied out drawers on the counter. I sat silently at the peninsula and watched my cereal go soggy, while Mom listed off all the things I was no longer allowed to do for the next week. Dad sang in the shower, oblivious to our argument and the existence of life outside of his own. The hypocrite. He didn't care if Mom woke up when I shouted at the bathroom door earlier. He just wanted me to shut up. The cereal sank slowly into the bowl. I swirled my spoon around until the milk turned gray and the bran flakes were little more than a chunky paste. Mom kept talking, her eyes on me as she continued to list off all the things she knew that I loved, that she was taking away. "And you have to come home right after school. No going to your friend's house this week. Do you understand me?" My face and hands went cold. "But you and Dad won't be home till after midnight. I'll be here by myself all night." Did she expect me to sit in the dark all day alone? "Should have thought about that before you stayed out all night," Mom said. I struggled against the black anxiety that told me I shouldn't admit to feeling any kind of way. Feeling things was dangerous. I was better off accepting the punishment. The words I wanted to say stuck unpleasantly in my throat. But I couldn't stay at home by myself, so I took a chance. I don't want to be alone. As I uttered the words out loud, the skin on my arms and back prickled uncomfortably. Mom rolled her eyes. Yeah, no. You can handle a week-long grounding. Her interest in me disappeared completely as she finally found what she was searching for. The full contents of the kitchen drawers spread across the entire peninsula, immediately forgotten as Mom cradled a small bottle of sleeping pills in her hand and worked to get the lid off. I didn't know that bottle was in there. I watched irritably as she popped 2 of the little purple pills into her mouth. Dad walked into the living room with a towel wrapped around his thick waist. His hairy belly hung out for the world to see. Who's grounded? He asked amiably. Mom shot him a cold look and left the living room without a word. He watched her go with a complex expression that was equal parts sadness, guilt, and frustration. I'm grounded, I answered, to fill the awkward silence to which Mom abandoned us. She wants me to come home right after school, but you guys are gone all day. I don't want to be home by myself. Listen to your mother, Sydney, Dad said. He didn't look at me as he spoke. His eyes lingered on the empty hallway through which Mom disappeared. His mind was obviously elsewhere. His mind was always elsewhere. I couldn't remember the last time the 2 of us had a proper conversation. He didn't sneak silly notes into my backpack anymore. He didn't drag me out to the garage to randomly test my knowledge of how to change a tire or check the oil despite the fact that I didn't have a car. It was like he wasn't my dad. You're not listening to me, I said. I don't want to be home alone. At least let Nicole come over until you guys are back. Ask your mother. Dad folded the blankets left rumpled on the couch. He stored the pillow in the wicker basket under the side table and stacked the blankets on top of it. I'm asking you, I said. My head pounded hard enough that my vision tunneled every time my heart beat. You have a say in this too. I stand by what your mother said, he answered in an apathetic monotone. Buck naked except for his towel, Dad laid down on the couch and switched on the TV to watch highlights from the football game he missed the night before. Like we weren't even talking. Like it didn't matter. When I was little, Dad used to help me build magic forts in my room out of blankets and pillows. He would sit inside the fort and read me stories while I sat in his lap. When none of the other kids in middle school would talk to me, Dad instituted a weekly date night where we watched old action movies and acted out our favorite scenes. The man who snoozed, half naked on the couch, was unrecognizable from the one I used to adore. He was a ghost. The wall looked excruciatingly punchable, but I clenched my jaw and pushed the anger back down until it formed a tiny inferno in my chest. I thought you were running late. I stood quietly and pressed my fist onto the countertop. Illusions of breakfast were abandoned in favor of seething anger. I lied, he mumbled. He was already half asleep. I wish he would be a real parent for once, or at least a real man. I followed Mom's example and stormed out of the living room. Hey, Dad shouted. His head peeked out over the top of the couch and he scrambled to stand up, more interested in me in that moment than he'd been in months. You get back here, young lady. I slammed the bathroom door shut behind me and locked it. Dad pounded against the door seconds later. He called my name in something like a barbarian shriek. I ignored him and held my head tight. It would explode. All that would be left was an adorably dressed corpse and brain matter that spackled the mirror. Would you shut up? I'm trying to sleep. The least you could do is show me a little respect. Mom's shrill yell cut through Dad's furious baritone. Oh, we're talking respect now? The door stopped vibrating under Dad's pounding fists. How about a little respect for me? I haven't been allowed to sleep in my own bed for over a month. And whose fault is that? Yours! Their voices merged and combined into a cacophony of senselessness. My fingers snatched bottle after bottle from the medicine cabinet, eyes scanning labels for some ibuprofen to drown out the migraine. There were 2 bottles of heavy painkillers with some stranger's name written on them, and 3 more bottles of Mom's sleeping pills. Apparently, we had bottles hidden all over the house. If I took the painkillers, I wouldn't make it through my first class. I turned the bottle over in my hand and considered for a good long while. My teeth ground together from the solid ache in my temples. Carefully, I placed the bottle back on the shelf. With an inward groan, I turned on the faucet in the sink and slurped a half-gallon of lukewarm water. It tasted like metal. If I was lucky, which I usually wasn't, the water would ease away the worst of the headache. The nurse at school could give me some Tylenol later. Ice-cold water burned my skin as it blasted down from the grimy shower head, but it dulled the pain in my hot skull. Heat could have soaked away some of the misery, but cold numbed it well enough that I didn't have any real complaints. I stayed under the steady pulse of the shower head until my fingertips puckered from oversaturation and my lips turned blue. Goosebumps rippled across my arms and back and made the air feel hot when I stepped out of the shower onto a rough floor mat. I stood on the mat and let the water pool down around my feet, eyes closed as I breathed heavily through my nose. Behind the sound of the rattling bathroom vent, Mom and Dad's voices crashed against each other like chaos and broken glass. I dried off hastily, squeezing back into my clothes. The jeans plastered against my thighs and I jumped and squirmed to pull them the rest of the way over my hips. Something crashed to the floor in the other room, and Mom screamed wordlessly in outrage. Sweat beaded at the back of my neck. I tiptoed out of the bathroom. My shirt tangled itself around my bra strap as I tried to tug it down over my head. I wrestled with it as I raced out of the house. The front door closed to the sound of a lamp smashing against a wall. So that is the end of my excerpt. My book Fine comes out in about 3 days on May 15th, and it will be available in paperback and ebook formats on Amazon.com. So stay tuned because it will be released soon. And thank you so much for joining me today on CC Writes. I really hope that you enjoyed this excerpt from my book, and I will see you later.